Hello and welcome back to another episode of Moonsilver Arena. It's me, your one and only, the Rufilio Taurilius. This week is the level 2 fighter Bodin the Beast Slayer versus the level 2 Paladin of Lolth, the Drow Dorn. And since they're here and ready to go, let's get started. In his most recent battles, Bodin has been focusing on grappling his opponents, restricting their options. His 18 strength and 16 con are certainly great boons accomplishing this task. To help him capitalize on his strategy is the +1 snake vine armor he just bought and is test driving tonight. As an attack action, Snake Vine Male casts Thorn Whip, dragging his victims 10 feet closer to him 3 times per day, as well as casting Entangle once per day. Finally, opponents grappled by Bodin are bound by Snakevine as they wrap around them, forcing disadvantage on athletic checks to break grapple and dealing 1d4 piercing damage from its thorns, should they attempt to break free. Another key feature of Bodin is his people's racial ability Stone's Endurance, allowing him to ignore 1d12 damage from an attack twice per day. Before we go any further, let's take a moment to appreciate the artwork both Bowden and Dorn's players made themselves to represent their characters. Their artwork being as awesome as their players have been to work with. Now, over here is the Drow Paladin of Lolth, sporting a 16th in strength, dexterity, and charisma. As a second level paladin with access to spells and able to convert spell slots into smites for 2d8 damage, any attack he landed would be detrimental. But will it be enough to contend with Bodin's ability to shrug off damage and the abilities of his Snakevine armor? Looks like we're about to find out. As the two approach the effigy and place their hands within, they are teleported to an arena of Moonsilver's choosing. Knowing Dorn is a serious contender, Bodin wastes no time in lighting a torch and moving away from his opponent to assess the situation and prepare a trap for his foe. To impress upon you the nature and limitations of their situation, I've joined the battle so you may have an idea of the player's point of view. Each character is limited to 170 degrees field of view, and with hard barriers set along the lighting layer, the players are unable to see around corners or through solid objects, making it possible, as in real life, for a foe to hide anywhere they are either unable to see or do not look. Dorn moves forward, their Drow's superior dark vision able to pierce the darkness and cast command, demanding Bodin grovel before him and extol his power and Lolth's supremacy. Needing a wisdom save of DC 13, he rolls an 8 and collapses to the ground, proclaiming Dorn's might. The Dark Elf continues forward as Bodin can only beg before the most awesome of powers that is Dorn and his god Lolth. Doran looks down on the groveling giant with contempt before bringing his gleaming longsword down on him, dealing 9 points of weapon damage and another 4 of necrotic as he smites his foe. Pain blooming fresh and intense floods his mind and chases away the command spell's effects as Bodin jumps to his feet and attempts to grapple the Dark Elf. But at the last second, using his shield, Dorn bats the clenching grasp away before bringing the longsword down on him yet again. Bodin's pain token flares, absorbing 2 of the 7 weapon damage before necrotic energy from Dorn's smite slams into him for another 7 damage. In response, Bodin launches himself forward and pushes Dorn back and down before disappearing around a corner to buy some time and catch a second wind, healing 7 points of damage. Wasting no time, Dorn picks themselves up off the ground and races after the Goliath, catching up to his target with a wide, wild swing of his longsword. Bodin, sidestepping the attack, activates his armor's ability and casts Entangle, Immediately, vines entangling overgrowth springs up around them, wrapping around their legs and feet and gripping them tightly. Though a mighty kick from Doran and Bowden both break the entangling mass growing around them, both remaining free of the spell's restraining effects. Dorn swings his longsword, landing a vicious strike for 8 damage against Bowden, who immediately relies on his people's ability, Stone's Endurance, to ignore 7 of the damage. Immediately the Goliath reaches out and grabs the Dark Elf in a grapple, vines springing forth from Bowden's armor, binding his opponent to him. From here on out, the bound target has disadvantage on resisting grapple and takes 1d4 damage each time they attempt to escape. The Dark Elf struggles against his constraints, but between the Goliath's smite and the raking thorns of the armor's vines, only damages himself in the process. Meanwhile, Bowden shifts his weight and throws his arm around his grappled foe in an attempt to restrain them. Dorn, failing the opposed athletics check made to resist the restraint, finds from this point forward their options are limited to first breaking grapple to relieve the restrained condition imposed upon them. Dorn's opposed grapple made with disadvantage to break free fails under the Goliath's might, again damaging himself against the armor's thorns as he attempts to escape. Bowden, possessing advantage on an unarmed strike to slam his head into the drow's, deals 5 damage, causing Dorn to channel Lolth's unholy malevolent energy throughout his body, where it violently mends torn flesh. Those who serve Lolth pay in pain for any boon she may grant them. The Dark Elf convulses in an excruciating healing of 9 points from lay on hands. Enraged to see his work undone before his very eyes, Bowden again rears back with his head and with advantage slams it into the Drow Paladins, dealing 4 damage. Unable to do anything else, Dorn struggles against his captivity, taking 2 damage from the armor's thorns. The Goliath again slamming his head into the Drows for 4 damage. Though this wild and wanton display of physicality and aggression creates a space for Dorn to find leverage and push against his opponent, finally breaking free. Immediately, the Goliath reaches for the Dark Elf with a great meaty paw, but Dorn bats the hand away with his shield and steps through his guard to sink his blade into the big fighter's gut. Again, and for their final uses per day, both Bowden's pain token and racial ability, Stone's Endurance, activates, allowing him to store 1 point of pain and ignore 10 of the elf's 9 points of damage. Abandoning his strategy of grappling, Bowden retrieves an axe from his belt and hacks wildly at the Dark Elf. But Dorn spins out of the way and replies with a vicious backhanded strike against the giant's throat. "You fought well, little giant," Dorn says proudly from above him, and then dropping to a knee to heal his dying opponent with this final point from lay on hands. Hovering in the void, that dreamlike space between life and death, Bowden's sense of self explodes with pain as he finds himself violently jerked back into the realm of the living. His frantic, pain-filled gaze finds the Drow Paladins, the glaze of endorphins from that same pain gleaming in the elf's eyes. And there, in the briefest of moments, each understood the other. Though the specifics were unknown, they understood that the other defined their existence through suffering, in a set of circumstances neither chose, but nevertheless endured. Then the effigy glowed above him, and Gloden experienced that familiar feeling of having his soul torn from him, and the silver light of being processed through moonsilver. Neither alive nor dead, neither in heaven nor hell, but a damnation to fight always in a space outside of time within the moonsilver arena.